In this episode, I venture out deep into the coastal mountain range. I follow a snow-covered windy mountain road deep into the forest and find an epic camping spot. I bring half of the ingredients from my kitchen and show you how I make an epic meal. I cook a massive ribeye steak to perfection over the grill. I make hand-breaded onion rings and deep fry them to golden perfection. I venture down by the river in the snow to photograph its beauty. When I was planning for this trip, I of course researched the weather and found that there was a weather advisory for the coastal mountain range. They were definitely expecting snow, so I wasn't surprised when a minimal climb in elevation, I started to see snow already. My original plan involved trying to find a high mountain lake. Unfortunately, the snow just got so deep that I had to turn back around. My backup plan was to find a spot along the river. As I travel up the snow-covered mountain road, I could often look off to the side and see the river. I didn't have a certain destination in mind. I was just looking for a spot along the river to camp. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So I did a bit of driving this morning up through the snow and over some mountains here in Oregon, and I found a beautiful camp spot next to a river. This is not a spot that's at a campground or anything like that. It's also not a spot that you have to pay for because I believe I'm in national forest right now. Anyway, the river's right behind me. I'm going to get the camera turned around and show you guys what I'm looking at. So I did everybody a favor here and I sped up the video of me setting up this pop-up fire pit and making a fire. I will make a few comments on this pop-up fire pit, and that is that there's some real benefits to having this thing. If you arrive on your camp location and there's a fire pit and it's soggy and full of water, this is a great way to get your fire off the ground immediately, and that's a real benefit. Also, you don't really know what's been in that fire pit, so maybe somebody had dirty diapers or tampons, or there's a buried paint can or something like that. You just don't know what's in there. So if you plan on cooking a meal over the fire, probably good to actually have your own fire pit, and this pop-up one is a great deal to have. After getting camp all set up, it was time to cook. I'd put a massive amount of effort into bringing ingredients to cook homemade onion rings and a ribeye steak. Unfortunately, much of the audio in this segment was not usable because the river was so loud. I know, what a problem to be so close to the river that your audio doesn't turn out. Anyway, I'm going to leave a list of ingredients required to make the onion rings in the description below, and do my best to walk you through what I did to make this delicious meal. Here you can see me doing my best not to cry on camera from the onions. In all seriousness, basically I'm just slicing the onions for the onion rings. It's pretty simple. You want to slice the ends off the onion, and then I like to slice the onions maybe 5/16 of an inch thick, and then separate the onions so that you have rings, and set them aside to make your onion rings. So I've got all the ingredients measured out here, and I'm going to tell you what they are. I'll put the quantities in the comments. One thing I do need to do is get the grill and the oil basically in the pot on the fire so it starts warming up. we want that oil to be about 350 degrees in order to deep fry these onion rings. But obviously we're going to need some oil. Peanut oil is probably, the #1 choice, but canola oil will work. It's significantly cheaper. At least this was on sale, so I bought it. We've got all-purpose flour. We've got baking soda. We've got salt. We've got black pepper, coarse ground if you can find it. We've got paprika. We've got honey. We've got sour cream, whole milk, and then we've got, essentially, this is called Panko, and it's breadcrumbs, essentially. And then, of course, we've got our onions all ready to go back here. And I like having everything kind of measured out and ready to go. I'm going to get the oil started heating up, and then we're going to mix these ingredients, and I'll show you the next steps here in a minute. So one thing when you're using oil like this and deep frying, you always want to keep the lid handy. I'm going to put the lid on here in a minute just to help it heat up faster, but if it catches on fire, don't put water on it. Just try to cover it with the lid and hope you don't die. All right, so we got the oil heating up. Now, the next steps, this is kind of a 3-step process after we get the ingredients mixed, but we're going to mix the ingredients first. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mix our whole milk, our sour cream, and our honey in a mixing bowl, and we're going to use a whisk to stir it up really well. We've got 1 cup of milk, half a cup of sour cream, and we're going to put approximately 2 tablespoons of honey in there, and then we'll whisk it up. Okay, so we got our milk in there. Then we're going to put our half a cup of sour cream. And it's pretty cold out, so this honey is not wanting to come out. But we want about 2 tablespoons. All right, it's really important that you get this mixed up really well. Might take a few minutes, but you don't want any chunks or lumps or anything like that. And next we're going to mix up some of our dry ingredients, but the panko, the breadcrumbs, actually don't get mixed in with anything, and you'll see why in a minute. But all right, I'm going to use this shallow, it's kind of a camping pan for the dry ingredients, but actually there's a reason I'm doing that, and that's because when I'm trying to scoop the onion rings out of this floury mix, if the sides of the bowl are really high, it's difficult. I've tried it. So we're going to go from this side first. We're going to put our flour in. Okay. And this is 1.5 cups of flour. And then we're going to put our baking powder. It's going to be 2 teaspoons. We're going to put our salt in, and that is 1.5 tablespoons. We're going to put 1/2 tablespoon of coarse ground pepper. We're going to put 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. And that's it for the dry stuff. We're just going to, in this case, take a fork, try to mix it up really well. You got to keep in mind that baking powder is really should be mixed up good. All right, so I've got 2 forks out. I'm going to have 1 fork for basically the drier stuff and 1 for dipping, and I'm sure I'm going to get some cross-contamination, but that's fine. So as I was saying, basically This is a multi-step process. All right. So here we go. First onion ring into the batter. We flip it over. We go into the flour. Okay. We want to make sure that this just gets completely covered. Now, it's going to be a little messy if you're touching the onion ring, but whatever works for you. Okay, so back into the flour mix a second time. Now, as you kind of go back and forth, you are going to get some lumps both in the batter and in the flour. Okay, so we've been in the flour twice. We're going back in the batter one more time. Okay, then we're going into the panko. And I've got a little panko still in the box. I like to just sprinkle it over the top. Okay, we're going to get it completely covered. Okay, we're going to very carefully pull it out. Now these things are definitely a little bit delicate at this point until you deep fry them. But essentially that's what it should look like right there. Okay. Now we're going to basically rinse and repeat for, however many we want to eat tonight. And then we'll get them all prepped, and then we'll go to the deep fry step. I'm going to check the temperature of the oil in just a minute because we definitely don't want it getting too hot. And then I'll get a plate of these onion rings prepped, and then we'll go to the deep fry. All right, guys, so I got a lot of the mess cleaned up, so really all that's left is the cooking. Now, these onion rings don't take long to deep fry, maybe, a minute or two per batch. This is I can probably do it in maybe 2 or 3 batches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook the steak first, and while the steak is resting, I'm going to cook the onion rings. And I'm going to put just a little bit of garlic powder on here. I like garlic. I'm trying not to put this directly over the flames. All right, we'll check that in just a few minutes here. All right, so I think it's about done. We're going to pull it off here. All right, it's literally falling apart there. All right, so we're going to let that rest for now while we get to cooking the onion rings. We're going to give them a little flip here. All right, so we're going to put some ranch in here for some dipping sauce. I know for people in the Northwest this is normal, but Some parts of the country look at you like you're a little crazy when you want to dip stuff in ranch dressing. But I like it. Alright, let's get our onion rings. See if we can build a little pyramid here. Or two. Now these are really feeling pretty crunchy. Alright, so the moment of truth. There's a little more flames kicking up than I wanted when I cooked this thing, but let's see how we did. I actually like my steak well done. Maybe medium well. Let's see what it looks like here. Ooh, that looks delicious. So that, to me, is just about perfect. Wow. All right, try these onion rings here. That turned out pretty darn good. Anyway, I'm not going to make you watch me eat here. I'm going to eat, and then I got a lot of dishes to do. All right, so I got done cleaning everything up. It's just starting to get dark now. I think I'm going to let the fire die down a little bit, and then I might pull the awning down because it was snowing a little bit ago, and you know the awning overnight is not going to collect snow very well. So probably do that in a few minutes just to be safe. I don't want to damage the awning. Plus, I think it would be a lot harder to put up with even more snow on top of it. So anyway, this might be good night. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's the next day, and as expected, it did snow a little bit last night. I'd say a good maybe 3 inches, but just a nice dusting all over the ground here and around the campground. I was actually hoping it would snow because I wanted to take some pictures down by the river, and the snow had almost completely melted down by the river. So I'm going to get together and make some coffee and try to wake up. Hey, good morning again. So I've walked down to the river. I'm about maybe 75 feet from where I was camped. There's a beautiful spot on the river here. I've got my camera set up and going to take a couple shots here. I'll walk you through my settings and whatnot here in just a minute. All right, so the river's flowing from left to right here, but there's also a small creek directly across that's flowing into it, and that's going to be my focal point. As far as settings, I tried a 3-stop ND filter with the CPL, and it was just more than I needed, so I took the ND filter off. I've just got the CPL on there. I'm at ISO 100, f14, and somewhere around a half a second for shutter speed. I'm doing single shot, of course, and got a 2-second timer. And I'm gonna probably spend a few minutes here with some different compositions, but this is just a beautiful spot. I don't know how long I'm going to hang out today because the snow's coming down pretty good, and as much as I like it up here, I don't want to get trapped up here. Well, it's still snowing out. I went down and took a few pictures. I think I got some good ones. I've got camp all packed up. I don't know what the roads are going to be like heading out, so I think I'm going to get an early start out. I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for some photogenic river scenes on the way back. I carefully made my way back down the mountain roads. The snow was noticeably deeper. I couldn't help but feel just a bit sad because I know this is probably the last heavy snowfall I'll see this year. You see, it's late in March and spring is just right around the corner here in Oregon. I kept my eyes open for another beautiful place along the river to photograph. I came around a corner and was rewarded with another beautiful scene. I parked the Jeep, and since the snow had let up, I took a few minutes to take the drone and do a flyover, and then took a few pictures. Hopefully some of the pictures turned out. If they did, I'll post them at the end of this video. I just want to take a second to thank you for watching my video. I know your time is valuable. If you like this content, feel free to like and subscribe.